Well, joining us now is Sean Henry, Chief Security Officer at CrowdStrike and former Executive Assistant Director of the FBI. Sean, it's good to see you. Tell me what you think about China's influence over TikTok. There have been all sorts of talk about China setting up an American company that would run TikTok to try to protect it. What do you see as the solution here?
Well, Andrew, it's great to see you, too. China's top goal in the 21st century is to be the #1 superpower in the world. And we know that they have been aggressively and actively collecting intelligence against U.S. citizens and U.S. corporations for decades. And we've only seen that ramp up in the last few years. TikTok is a Chinese company, whether they've got an American affiliate or not. They're controlled by ByteDance, which is a Chinese-based company. China-based companies have legislation in place about data that needs to be shared, about Chinese party officials that need to be part of the company, their executive team. So there clearly is access there. And we know that there are three concerns about TikTok. One is, first, the security piece, right? The university didn't want people using TikTok connecting to the Wi-Fi. Is there a code on that device or code within the application that could potentially be exploited? That's the first piece. The second piece is the collection of personally identifiable information. And certainly we've all heard about this. China's been doing this actively by targeting U.S. companies to collect PII so that they can use it to potentially build dossiers on Americans and use it for some type of espionage. The third piece, and I think is one of the larger concerns, is the misinformation or the influence operations. In other words, can TikTok determine who gets what data, how it's received, when it's received, is it manipulated or not? They control the algorithm, and if you control the highways by which this data runs, you can actually determine what people see and how they see it. So that's a major concern of the U.S. government, Andrea.
So, Sean, where do you think they should come down in terms of the need for regulation and how they can control this and protect Americans' privacy?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to Americans themselves. It was interesting to see the student on the piece there talking about, yes, she does have some concern about what they have. So I think awareness is the beginning piece. People need to understand that when you are using any type of social media, how is it being used, what type of data is being collected, et cetera. I think the U.S. government, through the CFIUS process, there was a reference there in that piece, what they're doing to ensure that there is some control, there may be some regulation. I think the U.S. government has more information about how TikTok may be using data that is not out in the public forum, some classified information. So I think that the government and these state agencies are taking actions to prevent this application from being utilized to collect against Americans. But I think it starts with the consumer. People need to understand how social media devices can be used against them and can potentially threaten national security, and then to make informed choices, Andrea.
And the other piece of this is that TikTok, we think of it as something that young people use, the popularity of it, but my understanding is that it's used by advertisers now. It is a main form of advertising.
Yeah, there are a lot of companies because of the reach. There are over 1 billion users around the world. So this is not just a U.S. issue. It really is a global issue. And there are companies that are using it to advertise. If users stop using it or change the way they utilize the application, then advertisers will make those choices as well. They'll make changes in their advertising dollars and how they're spent, Andrea.
Sean Henry, thank you for your expertise.